Let's continue with our remaining topic of chapter 7, Indian economy. So here is the first one, land revenue. What do you mean by land revenue? Those who are farmers, they have to give something in return to the authority in the form of revenue. Land revenues were as high as half of produces of the farmers. Whatever the farmers were producing in their farms by doing hard work, I think half of the share they have to give as a land revenue. The British government collected land revenue from the farmers through zamindars. The farmers who failed to give revenue were punished by the government and were charged fines. Sometimes Britishers were also taking their whole farm and they were becoming helpless. Next is high rates of taxes. So actually children, let me discuss something more about this condition. Whenever they came over here in India and they started getting control over our people, over our country, they started all just what I can say like a torture on our people. Farmers were the more sufferer because ultimately they have to give each and everything of their shares to this British government. If they fail to do that, sometimes they were fined in the form of their land. High rates of taxes. Indians who were poor had to pay 15% of their national income as taxes. Can you believe that? Whatever the poor people were earning, it was not sufficient for their family also, and then also they have to give 50% of their income. High rates of excise and customs. Now whatever import exports were doing by the farmer, by the people or by the traders, high rates of excise duty and custom duties were charged on them. Excise rates were high on commodities like sugar, matches, steel, silver, etc. Though salt was easily available in India, the British monopolized salt trade and imported salt to India by levying. By levying means forcefully doing high custom duties and thus made salt expensive for poor Indians. To protest this, Gandhiji started the Salt Satyagraha. You might be remembering Dandi March, right? Gandhiji started the Salt Satyagraha with the Dandi March. 15% excise were imposed on Indian cotton clothes export, while tariffs on the tariff means extra expense on only about 2.5% was on the cotton cloth imports from England. You can see the difference from here. If you are purchasing raw material from India, then you have to pay 15% of excise duty. And if you get that from Britain, then you have to pay only 2.5. See the difference. If I'm not wrong, 12.5% difference was there. So such a way, it was a big threat for farmers also. Those who were engaging with this business like cotton clothes export and import business, they have also had to suffer a lot just because of the policies of British government. Next one is that industrial policy. Now those who are having industrial, overall nobody was left from this torture. Either the people were engaged with laborer work, with farming, agriculture activity, or they were connected with any industry. Anyhow, they have to give share of their income to government. The period from 1750 to 1830 was the period of industrial revolution, and by that time East India Company, you have heard this name also, East India Company had started establishing rule in India. First, East India Company came with the purpose of doing trade with Indians, and later on they started ruling over India. In 1858, the British government established its rule. The British government adopted a policy such that only light and consumeries were started by Indian industries and no attention was given to other basic and key industries. You see, what was the thinking behind this? What was the thought behind this policy? Light and consumery items were given response. encouragement by the government, and our basic needs were there, key things were there, their industries were depressed. The industrial policy adopted by the British government was such that to export raw material from India to Britain and sell goods made in Britain to India. So both the side, if you get raw material from Britain, you have to pay more. If you sell Britain industrial made items in India, then also you have to pay double. So anyhow, Indians were the most sufferer all over the world, I can say, and such a way we lost our all wealth. The next one is that economic exploitation. Exploitation means what, beta? If you misuse something, then it is said exploitation. The East India Company and later the British government adopted policies that exploited, misused Indian resources and promoted British industries in order to benefit their economy. See, if you get raw material from Britain, you have to pay them. If you sell their items in India at higher rate, ultimately again you are adding to their economy. So such a way they exploited our Indians. They took benefit. They misused our Indians. Indian agriculture was also exploited by collecting high land revenue. As I explained you earlier, farmers were they were having very much pathetic condition at that time during British government time. Exploitation of artisans, those who are having some skills, right? It was so that all were not farmers or industrial. Many people were earning through their skill. They were making crafts, handcrafts, and they were earning. So they were also exploited by the British government. In order to make high profits, the East India Company purchasing goods from Indian artisans at up to 15% to 40% lower prices. Whatever their total cost were there, they were paying just 15 to 40% to these artisans, craftsmen, and sold them in the world at higher rates. See beta, our people were skillful. Skillful means they were having lots of skills were there. They were making unusual items, extraordinary items. So what these Britishers were doing? They were purchasing the things from our artisans at very low rate, low prices, and they were selling in the world market, global market at higher prices. So profit was going in their pockets only, not to our craftsmen. Thus, Indian artisans were exploited economically, right? Next one is their investment pattern. The British made only those investment in India which benefited more to Britain. I would like to repeat this line once again. The British made only those investment in India which benefited more to Britain. So they were masterminded. I can say this word for them. Britishers were masterminded. How it is so? Wherever they found profit, they were ready to invest. They were doing that kind of investment in India. But where they found that it is no more useful, it will not add to their economy, so they were not doing investment. Right? You got children? The British invested in railways and road networks to help movement of raw materials and goods for their industry. I repeat, who brought railways in India? British brought railways, and they also developed the road network in India. For what was the reason? See, if they do not find profit, they would not have made this development in India. But they found that if railways facility is there, road network is good enough, then I think it will be helpful for the movement of raw material, and ultimately they will earn from that. That is why they invested. This is the one of the example. See, this is proving that Britishers were just money-minded, profit-making people only. They invested in education to run the British administration. The British prevented Indians from getting technical education for their benefit. They made selective investments in India only for their benefits. See beta, in education also, children, they make many schools. They actually developed many schools in India. British schools were there during that time, British government that time, and they were also making children compulsory. Those who were service people, I can say service class people were there. They were making people compulsory to send their children in their school so that they can earn profit from there. They even remove many of the languages. They banned some of the languages which are just related with our culture, our tradition. They completely remove from our education system. So this was one of the big loss for our Indian culture during that time. In short, I can say that their investment pattern was like that. Wherever they were getting profit, they were ready to invest, and if they found that there is no profit, they are not going to earn through that investment, they were not doing at all, whether it is railway network, road network, or education system itself. They were only and only thinking about how they can get more and more from Indian people, right? The next one is there, payment burden. India had to pay huge amount of money known as home charges towards the maintenance of British colony. See beta, they established colony and we have to pay for that in the form of home charges, and you know very well it also won't be very less also that anybody can afford it. That is also in the form of high taxes. Home charges included salaries of British personnel, administration, maintenance of the army, war expenses, pension to retired officers of British only, not our Indians, interest payment for debts, interest on the railways, and civil and military charges, etc. Payment burden, as they were not allowing us to earn something, right? Whatever we were earning, on that also loads of taxes were there, charges were there. If you are Indian, you have to pay home charge, and through that home charge, through that collection, they were just fulfilling their needs. They were paying the salary to their officers, they were running the offices, British offices, maintaining army, war expenses, this and that. All expenses they were doing only and only for British people, not for us. In 1945, the amount of home charges was 1,350 lakhs pound. Thus, due to various payments, the British became prosperous. Prosperous means wealthy. See, 1,350 lakhs, and at what time? Before independence, that is in 1945, when value of lakhs pound was too much, and such a way, by collecting amount in the form of home charges and other taxes, British became very prosperous. So my dear children, when they left our country, they were having as much that their many generation can live a happy and healthy life without doing any work. So this was all about Indian economy. Let's see the summary of this lesson. During the British rule, India was under much pressure in agriculture, industry and trade sector. As you can see, these three are the pioneer sector for our Indian economy, and these three sectors were under the British rule. So you can see that there was no chances to earn any profit by doing any of the activity, by doing agricultural work, industrial work or any trade factor. The per capita income of India was reduced. But natural thing is that you are earning, but you have to give your all profit in the form of various taxes. Then definitely the income of the people as well as of country will be reduced. A country which was once highly prosperous was impoverished means became just a poor country. Indian economy after independence. So now here's the real struggle started. Britishers left our country. When they left our country? 14th August 1947. Right? If I'm not wrong, 14th August midnight 1947. They left our country. No doubt we became independent. But we were not independent at all. Our economy was become zero. After independence, we struggle a lot. If you have grandfather or forefather at your home, please ask them what was the situation. Do they really enjoy the independence of India? They will say no. We were in great debt. We were not having food to eat. Many were just on the road and many people just struggle for their survival. So this was the condition after our independence. Let's see ahead. After independence, 15th August 1947, the changes created in Indian economy are as follow. Now anyhow, we have to come up from that struggling situation. We have to manage our country. We have to pull up our country. What was the criteria are there that you are going to see now? Per capita income. According to Human Development Report in 2014, the per capita income of Indian in 2013 was $5,150 per capita income, per head income. It is lower than that of developed countries like USA, England, Germany, Norway, but also lower than many developing countries like China and Sri Lanka. Can you believe that? Our per capita income was lower, the lowest than all other countries. Next one, agriculture. At the time of independence, 72% of population was dependent on agriculture, which declined to 58% in 2001 and 2002 and to 49% in 2013 in 2014. As we have discussed earlier, beta, most of our economy, our national economy is depend on agricultural sector. So it was damaged a lot after independence. Thus, after independence, the importance of agriculture is reducing. Industries. The shares of industrial sector in employment was 10.6%, right? 10.6% in 1950 to 51, which increased to 18.8 in 2001 and further 24.3% in 2011 and 12. The share of industrial sector in national income was 16.6% in 1950 to 51 and it was 26% in 2013 to 14. These are just figures only. Through this figure we can come to know that how agricultural sector reduced after independence and industrial sector contribution in the Indian economy increased. The pace was little slow, but it was certain, steady. The share of the industrial sector in the national income was 16.6 and in 1950 to 51 and it was 26% in 2013 to 14. Thus, after independence, the industrial sector is progressing but cannot be called a completely industrialized nation. See, we are developing country. We are doing tremendous job in our different sector, whether it is agricultural or industrial or service sector. But still, my dear children, we are a developing country. We cannot say that our nation is industrialized, right? Next one is the service sector. The share of service sector in employment was 17.3% in 1951, which increased by 25.2% in 2011 to 12. The share of service sector in national income was 30.3% in 1951, which increased to 50.4% in 2000 to 2001 and further to 52.7% in 2015 and 14. Thus, it shows that India is moving fast on the path of growth and development. We are doing our best to get our dignity back. As we have seen the golden bird before the British rule, I hope that in nearby future we can proudly say that we are living in India, which is again known as a golden bird. The remaining topics of this lesson we are going to see in the third video of this lesson. Till that, do revise this. If you have any problem, please share with us. We will try to sort it out. Thank you so much.